All right. Hey, everyone. Everyone having a good time here at Flight Sim Expo? Yeah? Who's here for the first time? Okay. Just a couple of new people. So excited about everything that's happening? Yeah? Okay. So I guess you're here to listen about helicopters, which is something I kind of like for some time. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sérgio. I'm from Portugal. Therefore, my weird accent. I've been flying helicopters since 2005, something like that. And then I've never stopped. It's pretty much all I do. And back in 2016, I started this project called helisimmer.com to get the community to get together, get some resources out there, help people go through the path that I have been going through before. Because flying helicopters, it's very hard, right? So I started helping people. I started getting some articles out there, talking to people, exchanging some emails. Back in 2019, I was here, but we'll get there. Because right now, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to get to the Choppa. And before we start, I have to do this, guys, because, you know, it's the meme, right? It has to be here. Okay, now that we just take that away, here's what most people think about when they're flying helicopters. Yeah, I was there. Guys. So like I was saying, back in 2019, I was here, well, not here, but at Orlando for Flight Sim Expo 2019. And I did a presentation about flying helicopters, starting to fly helicopters. This is somewhat of a second part of that presentation. You don't actually have to see the first one to understand the second one and vice versa, but they complement each other. So if you have the QR code, you have the address there. If you want to check it out later when you're home, it will probably help you with other things that I'm not going to cover here. One or two things I'll probably cover, but I will not cover everything. Okay, so the very first thing that people know is that helicopters are very, very, very hard to control. Okay, that is granted. And everyone that tries to start with helicopters has that problem. So the very first thing I say to everyone that wants to learn how to fly helicopters is that you need to be mentally prepared. You have to understand that this is really very hard. Helicopters are not easy at all. It's just how they are, okay? And if you're trying a helicopter on a sim and it's easy for you, there are two choices here, or two options. You are either really good at it, or the helicopter is not really that good. Well, there's a third option. There's some electronics behind it helping you out. Okay, so the very second thing I tell people is that you need to practice, practice, practice. That's the thing that you need to do. But you also need to understand helicopters, how they work, how controls work. I will not go through that. You can find all that information at helisimmer.com. We have a section called How to Fly Helicopters. And I'll get you through what the controls are, what they do, how they interact with each other, and all the basic maneuvers, more advanced maneuvers, a lot of different things that you can learn from there. What I'm trying to do here today is help you, as someone that has never tried helicopters and want to get into it, to know what is it that you need to do. But this is not limited to those that are brand new to helicopters, because I am sure that a lot of these things that I'm going to talk to you about will be useful to you even now. I know because they are useful to me, and I've been flying them for a long time. And I'm not perfect. I've flown them for a long time. It doesn't mean I fly them really well. So what is it that we need to do? We need to find, if you haven't done so already, we have to select a sim. And I have quite a few sims here. A lot of them you already probably heard. Who has heard of Microsoft Flight Simulator? Okay, you have heard probably all of this. Aerofly FS4 is probably a hidden gem. Not a lot of people know about it. It has its upsides and downsides. It has some quirks. It has some things that I wish were better, like water being actual water. But that's irrelevant if you're trying to just find how to fly helicopters and have the best flight model. Aerofly has an amazing flight model for helicopters. So much that the software is used with the hardware of a Swiss company called Loft Dynamics for professional helicopter training. And they are certified. So that's how good the software is. And then you have Digital Combat Simulator. Yes, it's a combat simulator, but it has amazing flight dynamics. Grab the UE, go flying around, do some auto rotations, do anything of the things that I'm going to talk about. It's as good as any other product. Flight Gear is an open source piece of software, really amazing flight dynamics. Can be a bit hard to use because of the user interface, but don't let that just throw you away from the sim. It's a good option as well. Microsoft Flight Simulator, of course, which a lot of people complain about and say that it's bad, and the sim is not bad. There are some bad helicopters there. That's a thing. But we also have amazing helicopters. So it's a good and perfectly valid sim. And then we have, of course, X-Plane, which has been known for quite some time. Any of these sims is perfectly valid for you to start flying helicopters. And after you select the sim you want to get into a helicopter, right? Well, no. Because if you are brand new to sims at all, the first thing I tell you is you need to start flying with a fixed-wing aircraft. Because a fixed-wing aircraft will be stable. You'll start to understand how the physics inside the sim work. You'll start to understand how the controls work, how sensitive your hardware is, how the software reacts to it. And you start to get used to the sim, to the actual piece of software. Because if you're going to get inside a helicopter, not knowing your sim, not knowing what to expect, you have an extra layer of difficulty for you. And you just want to take that away. You want to take away that layer. So get comfortable flying fixed wing. It doesn't matter what you do, just learn the physics, understand what happens, how the gravity is, how the controls react. And after you do that, you can then select your helicopter. Okay, and I have a list here of helicopters that I recommend, and most of them, with the exception of the UE, are default helicopters. And if you are wondering why is it that I'm not recommending a default helicopter, so a free helicopter for Digital Combat Simulator, the answer is simple, there isn't one. DCS does not ship with a free helicopter, unfortunately. So what I recommend you, get the UE. That's the helicopter I've been using in DCS for a long time. I have all of them, as you can imagine, but it's just a perfect helicopter to learn with inside DCS. Other than that, you have the default R22 and Airfly FS2 and X-Plane as well, the Cabra G2 from Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the 500D for Flight Gear, which is also free. It's not a default helicopter, but it's free. Just like the sim, just like Flight Gear is open source and free, most, if not all, of what is inside the sim or what you can get for the sim is free as well. You have selected your sim, you have selected your helicopter, you now need to select your airfield or region to start learning your helicopter. I always recommend you to start with a small airfield or airport or heliport or whatever in an area that doesn't affect your frame rate. So they do not have 30, 40, 50 frame rates in one region, and then you fly 300, 400 meters or 1 mile or 2 miles, and then it drops down to 5 frames per second. It will hurt you. It will hurt your learning experience, okay? So if you find somewhere that is relatively desert or in an island or something like that, that is just absolutely fantastic. And I have an example. For example, Alamo Landing Field, L92. It's one of the examples. But you can use whatever is it that you want. So we covered the sim, helicopter, location. You have to set up your controls. And what I mean by this, make sure everything is calibrated, all the axes are working, everything is set up the way that you feel comfortable with. And flying fixed wing will help you with that, because you are not crashing all the time and trying to control the helicopter all the time. You are just cruising it in a very stable platform, and you are tweaking your controls. And here's a tip for those that are using regular joysticks with a spring. If you can, remove the spring. Use zip ties to compress it. Just remove anything that will hamper your maneuverability, that will have you constantly be fighting the forces of the spring. And trust me, this may seem like something very weird or that won't have any impact. This was one of the things that I did, besides actually getting real helicopter controls, that really helped me learn how to fly helicopters. And if you're wondering, yes, it will flop. It will fall to the side. What I usually do, and this is going to be a very weird image for you guys, but what I usually do, especially with joysticks that have, well, most joysticks have a base. What I usually do is I place this part of my hand on the base of the joystick, and I control the joystick with my fingers. I don't grasp the joystick like this. I use my fingers to control the joystick. Without a spring, you have no forces, so it just moves freely. You can make very, very, very small movements, and that's what it's all about in helicopters. Most people don't even realize it. It's all about precision movements. Sometimes it's applying pressure more than actually moving any part of the control set, of the cyclic or collective or pedals. Just a little bit of pressure. And that little bit of pressure will not get you to over-control the helicopter. And it will help you a lot, okay? So next, we have to set our stage. And to set our stage, we will be establishing a training routine. So after we have selected our sim, selected the helicopter, selected the airfield, we are going to set the weather and go fly. And when I say set the weather, set it for any easy conditions that you may have. Remove the wind. Okay, remove any rain. Just place it at midday, sunny day, without any wind, anything like that, and keep it consistent. Yes, you will find rain further down the road as you see them. You'll find different winds, but you don't want that challenge right now. You don't want to be just like you have removed the layer of difficulty when you are learning your sim by flying a fixed-wing aircraft. You are removing more layers of difficulty by establishing everything as you have by having the weather very simple, without any more difficulties, without pushing you back and forth, okay? And once you do that, you have to maintain familiarity. So even the helicopter, you have to worry about fuel. If you are flying with 50% fuel, always fly with 50% fuel. So the weight is the same, okay? And the cockpit version of the helicopter should be the same as well. You should not be worrying about finding your gauges on one helicopter and then in a different version of the helicopter, the gauges are somewhere else. That's another layer of difficulty you really want to take out. And of course, maintain airfield familiarity. Same reason as before. If you know the area you're flying at, you won't be distracted. You know where the bridge is, you know where the buildings are, you know where the runway is, you know where the mountains is, you know where the trees are. And all that will help you out. And like I said before, keep time of day and weather consistent as well. All these conditions will always be the same throughout your training sessions. Okay, so you don't have anything changing, so you can get used to it. Further down the road, you'll have plenty of time to change these conditions, to fly at night, to fly with bad weather, different weights, different helicopter, whatever. But just keep all the conditions consistent as you are learning.
What seasons should we fly in? Does it matter? Summer?
What seasons? Yeah.
Setting of seasons start. Summertime?
Okay, what seasons we should select to fly at? I always recommend something like winter or autumn, something that is not very hot, so that you have a lot of lift. You don't have to worry about any more issues coming your way. Okay, if you do that, that will be just perfect. But you can fly in the summer if it's not too hot, or if you fly for a bit and you find the conditions are relatively good, just go with what works for you. You get less lift in hot weather, yes. Because of the heat, molecules tend to get more dispersed, so you get less air or less lift, so that is a problem, okay? We have set our stage, we have the helicopter, the sim, the controls, we have removed the spring, everything is ready. We will start talking about some exercises, okay? And people ask me, I was just having a conversation earlier today about what is it that we need to start with for learning how to fly helicopters. And everyone will tell you, hover. You will have to master the hover. And that is true. But the very first thing, step 0, if you want to call it, start from the air. get your helicopter in a position where it's already flying at speed. Because speed would help the helicopter be stable. With speed, you get wind going through all the structures of the helicopter, the vertical stab, the horizontal stab, and it just flies almost like an aircraft. And just like you did with the fixed-wing aircraft, you are going to get a feeling for what the controls do, how they work, and how the helicopter responds to it. Fly around, crash, whatever you want to do, repeat, rinse and repeat. Just be comfortable with that. And once you are comfortable with that, then we are going to start with the hovering. And this is where we start the nightmare. This is where things really get interesting, okay? And for you to start the hover, here's a great tip for you. Look away from the helicopter. I have done this mistake many times. We are worried about not leaving that position because hovering is staying in the same position. So what we do, we tend to look to the runway, to the tarmac. Okay, and that hurts us because we are just looking at that point and the helicopter starts moving and we lose awareness of everything else around us. So for you to be able to do this, you'll have to do this. Of course, these lines is just, you're looking at, at the distance. So don't look down, look at the distance. Instead of looking at the runway, look further down the runway. Look at the end of the runway. Let your peripheral vision help you with movement, just like when you are in a car. Sometimes you're not even feeling the movement. You just know from your peripheral vision that the car is moving, and that will help you. This is one of the best tips I can give you regarding flying helicopters. A lot of people do this mistake, and I did it quite often. People look near the helicopter, and you have to look away. Okay? After we do that, after we look away from the helicopter, we will start increasing the collective slowly, compensating the torque with our pedals. And once we get, this is another tip, guys. Pay attention because this was taught to me by a Chinook pilot a long time ago. Once the helicopter gets off the ground, take your hand out of the collective. Because we tend to use the collective quite often as we are moving the cyclic, because once we move the cyclic, the helicopter tends to descend a bit. Okay, that's normal, okay? And I'll get to another tip there, but take your hand off the collective. Yeah, of course, if you happen to touch the ground again, give it a bit more collective so it rises, but take your hand off. Just use your pedals and your cyclic. And I mean it, you physically remove your hand from the collective. Yes? What about a collective that has an integrated throttle like a jet ranger? You need to worry about it because, at least on modern helicopters, you'll have a governor that will take care of the throttle automatically for you. But if you are if you're learning helicopters, you should be using anything that needs you to be in control of the throttle, okay? And what I'm saying right now is not true for your future career as a virtual helicopter pilot. We're just talking about learning from the basics, because further down the road, you will keep your hands on the controls the whole time. What I'm saying here is not true for you in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. I'm just saying this because this will become eventually muscle memory. You will not have to remove your hand from the collective. You'll have the hand on the collective, but you'll know that you don't have to do anything else. As newcomers to helicopter flight simulation, we tend to, it's something that our brain just does. We just start moving the collective up and down. Because we sense the helicopter drifting, and you know that if it's sinking a bit, we need to pull collective, but then it starts rising, and we need to push collective down, and it will be on that cycle. And not only we are going to be on that cycle of going up and down, every time we change a collective, we are changing the torque. So we are changing the torque, we need to change our pedal inputs. If you are changing our pedal inputs, your tail rotor is changing forces. And that thing is a propeller, guys. It will start pushing you to the left and to the right, and then you have to get more cycling in it. And if you get more cycling in it, you have to have some more altitude changes, and here we go again. Over and over and over. So that's why I say, okay, if you are starting physically, this helped me a lot. Just remove your hand from the collective. Once you're comfortable with it and you are in control, It's okay. You will have to keep the hand on the collective, but if you are starting, this is one of the best tips that I can give you. Okay. Try to keep the helicopter in the same general area. If you are starting in the same continent, will be nice. If not, try to at least keep in the same country. But just keep. Don't try to overdo it. The last thing that I say, that don't push yourself too hard. If you are drifting away quite often, just feel comfortable with it. It's just part of the learning process. Okay. And one other thing that I haven't put there, but I wanted to tell you about, is that it's okay for you to let the helicopter drift or sink or gain altitude or do whatever it wants to do. And you just have to let it do it. Learn what the helicopter does. If you are trying to constantly fight the helicopter, you will not learn the helicopter. Right? You will not learn how the helicopter behaves under certain conditions. You are constantly fighting it instead of learning it. Did you crash? No problem. You don't have to pay anything to anyone. Your insurance is not going to bother you. You just reset the sim and start again. Things will start to sink into your head. It will start to you start to get muscle memory. You'll start to understand what a helicopter does. And there will be a time in which you are going to be ahead of the helicopter because you know the helicopter. You're not going to be fight it, you are going to be flying it, which is something completely different. Okay, so that's another tip. After you kind of master the hover, I wouldn't say, do just hovering until you master it and spend 3 or 4 or 5 months just doing it. You can obviously do the rest. It's time to take off. And to take off, it's just a matter of hovering, which we already knew. It's quite easy. We just established that. Just take off. Just hover, push the collective to your front, and just push the cyclic to the front. Give it a bit more collective. Get into a fractional translational lift, and go from there. And once you go from there, you're going to fly a pattern or 2 or 20 or 100 or whatever it takes for you to get comfortable again with flying the helicopter. And this will help you with turns, altitude control, and speed control. But again, don't push yourself too hard. Don't try to do everything at once. Start with just flying the patterns. Just fly them. It doesn't matter how high you are, how fast you are. It doesn't matter if you are losing altitude or gaining altitude. Just do it. Just fly around. Just do a pattern, a regular pattern. Just fly over the runway, turn to your left, do it again, or just, first time, turn to the left, second time to the right. And once you are comfortable doing that, start looking at altitude and maintaining your altitude. Ignore speed. And once you have everything, you have speed and you have your altitude controlled, then you start worrying about speed. Get things one step at a time. Get comfortable with every step that you have just taken so you can actually take the next step. And after you do that, it's time to land. And people do say that landing is pretty much the opposite of taking off, but it's not. It's almost like that. It's everything is reversed. So when you are taking off, you get into effective transitional lift. So you gain lift, and the helicopter pops out. You can actually do that test when you're more comfortable flying helicopters. Get to a hover, push the cyclic forward, gain some speed. Don't do anything else. Just do this. Have enough collective so that it doesn't sink into the runway. And once you go past 20, 30 knots, something like that, depends on the helicopter or the sims, you will see the helicopter will pop up. It's a lot of fun. And you'll understand, okay, I'm gaining more lift. But the thing is, if you are reducing speed and going back from those 20 or 30 knots, guess what? You're losing speed. You're losing lift. Sorry. But one of the good things that happens when you're closer to the ground, you are losing lift, but you will gain ground effect. So you'll have a cushion of air underneath you to help you. And you need to understand that as well. And that's why I say that it's not the same as taking off, but the opposite, because you don't have to worry so much about this ground effect as you are taking off. You have to pay some attention to it, especially if you are taking off from buildings and whatnot. But when you are landing is where things can get really, really scary and really, really hard. Once you do that, it's time to do some hover taxiing, some low-speed maneuvering. By doing this, you get some more altitude control and speed control. Again, beware of your collective. Don't be always going up and down with the collective, applying more forces and having to fight the helicopter. Just do it smoothly. Smoothness is the secret, well, one of the many secrets to fly a helicopter. You have to be really smooth. You have to use pressure, feel the helicopter, know what it's doing, and go from there. And then after this, you just create your own playground. Select either the same airfield that you are at, or any other one, and just use, for example, the markings on the runway to do some hover tackings, for example. You can take off from the circle on the right, go all the way to the circle to the left, hover, do a 360, continue to the end of the runway, do 180, come back, get more and more control, use other areas around you to just take off and land from. Do these kinds of circuits in which you are hopping from one point to the other. You can land anywhere. It's one of the cool things about helicopters is that you can land anywhere, right? So use that to your advantage as you are training, especially in this area over here with some trees. You have this area here where you can land from this without any trees around you. But if you come from the opposite side, you have to take it to pay attention because you have some trees around your landing area. So that's another layer of difficulty that you are adding to your training. Now you're starting to add layers of difficulty from the beginning instead of just trying to fight them. And of course, I don't know if you remember what I said in the beginning. You have to practice, 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 but please do not force yourself into a meltdown. Start with small sessions, increase them over time. If it doesn't work, go do whatever you want. Even crash the helicopter, try new things, it doesn't matter. Do keep a pattern of training, but feel free to get out of that pattern of training and do everything else you need, because you need to be happy with this. You need to be happy with flight simulation and enjoying yourself. If you are getting frustrated with something, if you're not able to hover, if you're not able to take off, you are not able to do your turns, just stop. Just stop doing it. Go do something else. Go watch Netflix. Anything else. Here's one thing that I've learned over these years as well, is that sometimes when you are trying to do something and it probably happened to you as well. Sometimes you're trying to do something and you're trying and do it and do it and do it, and then you just quit for a few hours or a couple of days or even a week. And then you go back and you nail it the first time. And you go like, what? It's weird, but that's how the human brain works. Sometimes things just get embedded in your brain and you don't even realize it. And that's what happens very often. So keep a steady rhythm as you are doing this, but don't ever stop having fun. And those were the tips that I have for you today. And like I said, I have the other video where I have some other tips for you. So these two lectures will complement themselves. You have my contact there. Please feel free to use it with any questions you have. Software, hardware, anything you need, maneuvers, some more ideas for exercises, anything that you might need, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to assist you. I've assisted a few of you that are sitting here in this room today. So please feel free to. Yeah, I think you had the question, Jim?
With the simulators, do you find that one is better than the other? Do the simulations do better for flying or in helicopters?
Okay, so if some simulators are better than others, there are always simulators that are better than others. There used to be, well, there are some simulators that I did not list here at the beginning that I don't consider to be good simulators for helicopters. They have issues with flight dynamics, okay? For example, you all know P3D, Prepared. It's an excellent simulator, but Lockheed Martin uses it as a product for their customers. So what happens is that whenever there's a customer that needs something with helicopters, they develop an external module that will control the helicopter. The internal flight dynamics for helicopters are really not that good, right? So that's why I didn't list it here. people ask me, it's not something that I recommend. If you want to do it, yes, do it. I flew helicopters with FSX. I flew helicopters with Flight Simulator 2004, even 2002, maybe something like that. So the very first version that brought helicopters, that's where I started flying helicopters. Those sims are the ones that I recommend. Are there ones that are better than others? Yes, there will be always differences. And for example, I can tell that X-Plane has always been considered an excellent sim for helicopters. DCS is an excellent for helicopters as well. Microsoft Flight Simulator is becoming a great platform for helicopters as well. It depends, nowadays it's starting to depend more on the developers that do those head-ons. Oh, if there are more developers developing for fixed wing than helicopters, yes, always, yeah. Helicopter flight simulation, just like with real helicopter flying, it's a niche. It's a very small market. So yeah, there's a lot more people working with a fixed wing.
Anyone with a home simulator in his garage at all
For
for helicopters?
helicopters, I know at least one guy here in the US and one in the UK, and then there are some simulation centers that have full cockpit, even with motion, and it's quite interesting. Yeah, it is quite interesting. Sorry, the gentleman was first.
Just real quick, thank you for your website. I almost always fly helicopters. And one thing I was going to point out is that I started off with trying to, like the G2 or the Cowan 500, crashed every time. So I went back to the H135 or more with stability control.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way I could learn when it's a more complex helicopter. But for me, it was actually easier to learn how a helicopter works because I had so much computer in the background helping the control. Once I mastered the H135, then I felt a lot more comfortable going to something that was completely unstable.
That's the path. So using a helicopter like the H135 or H145, yeah, those are stable platforms that have electronic systems that helps you. It's a path. It's not right or not wrong. I don't usually recommend it because I think that if you go through the challenges, you eventually progress faster. But that's me. That worked for me. I sensed that I was progressing more with a non-assisted helicopter than with an assisted helicopter. Everyone will have different experiences. And I've seen people having the exact opposite experiences, just like you were saying. You were able to evolve once you started flying with the H135. You understood how helicopters worked, and then you progressed to other helicopters. That was your path, and it worked for you. And it's a good tip for anyone else out there. So that's also a valid point. And thank you very much, and you're very, very welcome. Thank you very much for being one of our readers. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm sorry that this was.
Real quick, what hardware do you use for your collecting, and where do you position it?
Oh, okay. What hardware do I use? Well, I use an integrated hardware that has collective, cyclic, and pedals called Pro Flight Trainer Puma X. And it's actually here at Flight Sim Expo. If you go to the X-Plane booth, there's on one of the corners, there's a control set for helicopters. The owner of the company is there, Chris Niederhauser. Just talk to him, give it a try. It's an amazing piece of hardware. I really cannot live without it anymore. If that thing ever breaks, I will be very, 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 very sad. You just put it on the floor, and you can actually put a chair to prevent it from getting away from you, and it's all there. You don't need to attach it to your chair, to the bottom of your chair or anything. Everything is already in place. You just need to fly it. One USB cable, plug it to the computer, and you're done. Sorry? The booth? It's X-Plane, the X-Plane booth. Okay.
That was actually my question, but as a follow-on question to that, I'm totally new to simming, not new to flying, but new to simming. How hard is it to swap from an airplane type setup to a helicopter setup with the computers?
How hard it is to change from a fixed wing setup to a helicopter setup? Well, it depends on the setup that you have. For example, if you have a table where you have the yoke and the panels and whatnot, a unit like the Pro Flight Trainer can be very handy because you can hide it away, and then when you want to use it, you just pull it to you, get your chair done, and you're ready. There's just one thing that I always recommend people to do, which sometimes, it's not just about helicopters, it's in general. When you have more than one control set attached to your computer, chances of axes conflicting and you having issues may occur. So yeah, either pull it out or make sure you have everything set up the way you want to set up. For example, Microsoft Flight Simulator explain a lot of different sims allow you to create profiles. So you can clean up the profile and have one for helicopters and one for fixed wing, for example. So do one of those.
Is there a Bell Jet Ranger simulator program?
A Jet Ranger? Well, there are some. There's the Jet Ranger for Microsoft Flight Simulator. There's a Jet Ranger for X-Plane as well. I think there's a Jet Ranger for Flight Gear. But either one of those will work perfectly. There are a couple of great 206 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. One from Common Simulation. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Joshua Cohen of Common Simulation is here. Developer of great add-ons for Microsoft Flight Simulator and X-Plane. I don't want a fee. Thank you. So yes, you have some add-ons. Yes.
So would you recommend using like a flat monitor with head tracking or trying to use VR? And what are the advantages?
The question. So do I recommend head tracking or VR? I always recommend VR if you can use it. It's a whole new experience. I have made a video some time ago explaining why I think VR is the best option. I know people that cannot handle VR for different reasons. They get sick, motion sickness, whatnot. There are some people that they swear by head tracking so much that they don't want to consider VR. But here's the thing, and this is a lesson that I learned myself. You cannot explain VR to anyone. That's the thing. I cannot show you screenshots or videos or describe you the feeling. Unless you actually place a VR headset on your head and try it, you will never get it. But once you do, unless you have some problem that with like motion sickness or whatnot, you will not go back. Because VR gets you inside the cockpit. You get depth perception. You get real head movement. You're not looking at a monitor and moving your head while your eyes have to go, make weird things and you go all. Go with VR. I'm sorry. Follow up, yes?
And what kind of headsets would you recommend? Is there a certain resolution you want to have with your helicopters so you can see the instruments?
What resolution you want with a VR headset? As much as your computer can handle. That's the only answer I can give you. If it's better to fly helicopters with visual flight rules instead of instrument flight rules, yes. You want to lessen the burden as much as you can. You need to actually learn how to fly the machine and then add the layers of difficulty. Ignore VFR rules. Just fly. That's the thing. You are not bound to any rules when you are learning. Because these things are really hard. I was kidding at the beginning, but I was not kidding at the same time. It's the joke, but it's the joke that everyone in this room understands. These things are really hard. So just focus on learning them. Forget the rules. That's why I told you. Forget about maintaining altitude. Forget about maintaining speed. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you start to get that muscle memory to help you out. It's done? We're done? Okay, sorry, guys. I'll be outside to answer any more questions that you guys may have it. Thank you very much to the team here present at Flight Sim Expo. Please, some claps to the guys here. Thank you very much. Thank you all. See you later.